In ancient times, strange rock formations that display a regular pattern of almost hexagonal sections were sometimes explained as the work of a supernatural stone cutter, maybe even the devil himself trying to build a wall or a palace. To the Sioux people, Devil's Tower in Wyoming, with its characteristic polygonal columns, was sacred, and some of their stories tell how this mountain formed. A long time ago, a giant bear chased a group of children onto the mountain. Out of reach of the animal, the bear started to scratch the rocks with its claws, forming the joint separating the single columns from bottom to the flat top. Reportedly, Devil's Tower got its name from this legend. Instead of bear, the interpreter said bad god, which later became devil. Swiss physician and naturalist Conrad Gesner explained the columns in his 1565 book De Omni Rerum Fossilium Genera Compendium on Fossils, Gems, and Metals as gigantic crystals, noting the similarities of the rocks to the regular shape of some minerals. In 1693, an expedition of the Philosophical Society of London to the famous Giant's Causeway in Ireland confirmed the natural origin of the columns. Slowly cooling lava will shrink in volume, and a pattern of regularly spaced cracks and fissures will form. However, as this is a really slow mechanism and the complete cooling of a large volume of lava can take longer than a century, no direct observations of their formation exists. But a research team at the University of Liverpool has now replicated the mechanisms how such rocks crack during the cooling process on a small and quicker scale in the laboratory. Their experiments used basaltic rock samples recovered from a borehole at a geological volcano in Iceland. The samples were heated in special cylinders to more than 1000 degrees centigrade. Basalt melts at temperatures of approximately 1000 to 1200 degrees centigrade. The samples were fixed at each end in a mechanical grip and cooled to test at what point the cylindrical core cracked. The basaltic rocks fractured at between 840 to 890 degrees centigrade. So the joints of the regular polygon pattern of basalt columns form at a relatively high temperature when the rock is already solid, but still at an early stage of the cooling process. As the joints form, fluids can start to circulate inside the rock formation, speeding up the cooling process. The experiments showed also that faster cooling also produces smaller columns. The observations could also explain why the columns at Devil's Tower are so large. Devil's Tower is an ancient volcanic plug, once covered by sediments. As the volcanic rocks cooled slowly, insulated by the sediments, large columns could form. Only later erosion exposed the unusual shape of Devil's Tower. Still, some mysteries surround the formation of the columns. The cooling experiments were done on small samples, just 8 inches in length. Geologists are still puzzled about the details controlling the formation and pattern of columns in large bodies of volcanic rocks. In nature, the joints can form only if the rock is brittle enough and grow over time from the cooling outside into the inner, still hot and soft, inside of the intrusion. The joints of the columns develop at approximately right angles to cooling surfaces, which are usually the tops or bottoms of lava flows, the walls of a magma chamber or a volcanic conduit. In case of the Devil's Tower, the columns are tilted to the base, suggesting also that the cooling surface, the walls of the volcanic plug, were tilted towards the outside. But why the columns become almost vertical, and so a challenge to rock climbers, in the reconstructed core of the Devil's Tower intrusion, is a bit of a mystery. Geologists assume that tectonic forces and chemical composition of the volcanic rocks influence the distribution of heat inside the intrusion. As the joints follow the isotherms, lines that connect points of the same temperature, maybe the modern geometry of Devil's Tower reflects the still poorly studied mechanisms of magma emplacement in Earth's upper crust. 7 majestic facts about Devil's Tower. Steven Spielberg fans are likely familiar with Devil's Tower, even if they don't know it by name. The dramatic butte, which towers 1,267 feet above the plains of northeastern Wyoming and the Belle Fourche River, was famously featured in 1977's Close Encounters of the Third Kind, culminating in a scene in which an alien mothership descended upon the rock formation. Thanks to the film's upcoming 40th anniversary, which will be celebrated with a theatrical re-release, a special Labor Day weekend screening at the base of Devil's Tower itself, and other festivities, the iconic butte is back in the limelight. That said, there's a lot more to this natural wonder than what you've seen on the silver screen. 1. Devil's Tower is sacred to many Native American tribes. To the Northern Plains Indian tribes, Devil's Tower isn't just a stunning landmark, it's a sacred place. It appears in multiple oral histories and sacred narratives and is also known by multiple ancient names. For example, the Arapaho call Devil's Tower Bear's Tippy, the Kiowa refer to it as a loft on a rock or tree rock, and the Lakota people know it as Bear Lodge Butte, Grizzly Bear's Lodge, Mythic Owl Mountain, Greyhorn Butte, and Ghost Mountain. However, it's commonly referred to as Mateo Tepe, which is likely Sioux for Bear Wigwam or Bear Lodge. Long ago, the surrounding region was home to many bears. To this day, Devil's Tower is frequently the site of ceremonial rituals, including sun dances, sweat lodges, and prayer and artifact offerings. While visiting the park, make sure not to touch or move any religious artifacts. 2. Its name is controversial. Devil's Tower received its popular English name in 1875 when Colonel Richard Irving Dodge led geologist Walter P. Jenney's scientific expedition through the Black Hills region. They were there to confirm claims of gold, first initiated by General George Armstrong Custer. But when they arrived at the rock formation, they were overwhelmed by its natural beauty. Dodge described the landmark as one of the most remarkable peaks in this or any country. Dodge recorded the butte's name as Devil's Tower, writing that the natives called this shaft the Bad God's Tower, a name adopted with proper modification by our surveyors. But since so many native names for the towering formation reference to bear, plus native translations for Bear Lodge, appeared on early maps of the region, it's likely that Dodge's expedition simply mistranslated the landmark's name. In the Lakota language, the bad god or evil spirit is called Wakansika, and the word for black bear is Wahanksika. In recent years, native tribes have petitioned to officially change the name of Devil's Tower to Bear Lodge, as they find the current moniker offensive. Meanwhile, other locals argue that changing the formation's name would cause confusion and harm regional tourism. 3. Devil's Tower was America's very first national monument. Devil's Tower was the very first official United States national monument. It was proclaimed by President Theodore Roosevelt, who famously loved the American West, on September 24, 1906, shortly after he signed the Antiquities Act into law. Roosevelt made Dodge's translation the tower's official name, but along the way, the apostrophe in Devil's Tower was dropped due to a clerical error. The error was never corrected, and to this day, the tower is simply called Devil's Tower. 4. It's not a volcano. Some claim that Devil's Tower is an old volcano, but geologists say it's likely an igneous intrusion, meaning it formed underground from molten rock or magma that pushed up into sedimentary rock and became solid. Over millions of years, the surrounding sedimentary rock eroded away to display the tall, grayish core within. Experts estimate that the formation of Devil's Tower occurred about 50 million years ago, whereas the erosion took place between 5 and 10 million years ago. 5. It's not hollow. Devil's Tower is composed of a rock called faunolite porphyry, which is like a less sparkly granite, as it contains no quartz. And while it may appear hollow at a distance, the striated monument is actually solid. The NPS compares it to a bunch of pencils held together by gravity. 6. But it's still really big. Devil's Tower isn't simply tall, it's also very wide. Its summit is around 180 feet by 300 feet, roughly the size of a football field, and the circumference of its base is around 1 mile. 7. It's a famous rock climbing attraction. Devil's Tower is popular among rock climbing enthusiasts who rely on its many parallel cracks to shimmy their way to the top. Long before modern climbing equipment existed, local ranchers simply made do with a wooden ladder. According to the National Park Service, Devil's Tower sees between 5,000 and 6,000 rock climbers a year. However, the site is closed to climbers each June, as Native American ceremonies are often held during and around the summer solstice. Additionally, some routes are closed each spring to protect nesting prairie or peregrine falcons. Located in the Black Hills in Crook County of Wyoming, the Devil's Tower is definitely among the most interesting sightseeing spots in USA. It is a giant volcanic rock with a height of 1,267 feet above the ground and 5,112 feet above sea level. So what makes it so unique? The shape of the tower, which raises straight to the sky, is filled with thin pieces of rock that allow visitors to climb on it. Although the date of the formation is still uncertain, geologists have discovered how it was created. Apparently, the giant tower is in fact what's left of a large massive rock that came out to the surface through several beds of overlying sedimentary rocks. As time passed by, natural events such as rain, wind and storms gradually modified the shape of the tower by eroding the volcanic rock. The properties of the volcanic rock makes the tower to change its shape easily. Those who get there at the right place and the right time can notice large pieces of rocks and even giant columns falling off the main volcanic rock. The stones found at the base of the structure prove that the initial shape of the tower was much larger than it is today. However, it's not geology that draws so many people to this outstanding natural masterpiece, but its history. As evidence suggests, the name of the Devil's Tower was first given by the Colonel Richard Irving Dodge. He discovered the rock formation during one of his expeditions in 1875. In fact, the colonel named the structure the Bad God's Tower, but it was changed in time to the Devil's Tower. There are other names related to it as well, including Grizzly Bear Lodge, Gray Hornbuttle and Hihotapaha. Also, the large number of legends are related to the place. One of the most popular legends about the Devil's Tower comes from the Kiowa tribe. According to it, there once were 7 sisters who wandered outside the village they lived into the forests. As they walked around in wilderness and they got lost. Later, they were attacked by a giant bear. While the girls prayed for survival, the earth started rising beyond them, creating the Devil's Tower, and the 7 girls were turned into stars that now are known as the Big Dipper Formation. The mystery surrounding the Devil's Tower is definitely among the main reasons why it's become so popular among tourists. Nevertheless, the shape and the surroundings turn this place into an unforgettable natural sightseeing objective. As you can see, this is the actual footage of the mysterious Devil's Tower.